Thank you, Crystal, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Welcome to Artifacts, creating a map for success. Just call me Mayfield. I'm a discipline lead in the supplemental instruction program at JP College. I typically SI for US history and philosophy.
Hi, I am Samantha Krasko, and I am an SI at JP as well, and I am a discipline lead as of this semester, and I have done supplemental instruction for math, but I primarily do social science statistics.
Hi, my name is Emi. I SI for social science statistics at JP College, alongside Sam and Jasmine.
Alrighty. Whoops. Sorry. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. So today we're going to talk about artifacts and how to create artifacts for the first hour. We'll have some additional talking points and a Q&A portion from 4 p.m. to 4:30. We may also send you a couple of links with additional materials in the chat, so definitely look out for that. A couple of outcomes for today. So participants will exercise self-awareness, digital fluency, and an entrepreneurial mindset in order to craft activities that allows students to craft artifacts. We'll adapt some conceptual portions of both tutoring and SI sessions into a contract document, among other things that the students can take with them post-session. And we hope that you will learn to encourage collaborative learning strategies for students to create something that they can reference to out of session. A couple of housekeeping. So here is, we definitely love for you to interact in the chat and with any other reactions. I am personally privy to this one here, little celebration one. That one's my favorite, but you're welcome to use any one that you like. If you have a question at any time, you're free to raise your hand, and definite shout out to the folks at Pierce College for this handy layout. A few community agreements before we get into the fun stuff. That way we can work best together today. So give yourself permission to explore new tools and ideas. Definitely interact. As I mentioned in the previous slide, definitely use the chat and breakouts and group shares, since we will be using a breakout session a little bit later. But if you cannot participate for whatever reason, please feel free to let Lindsay know, and they will plan accordingly. Confusion is great. We welcome confusion and any questions that you might have. And most importantly, do be kind. And be sure to share as much as you are comfortable with in our future activities.
All right, so we have our agenda for today kind of mapped out for you guys. So we have a think, pair, share activity, which will be spread throughout this whole presentation. We have our KWL activity part 1, artifacts. Then we're going to go into a little bit of a lecture portion. What is an artifact? Why is it important? And then we're going to finish up our KWL activity part 2, where we are creating our own artifact, or you guys are going to create your own artifact. And then finally, we're going to do a share out of your artifact before our Q&A portion. So for the first activity for today, we're going to actually get started on a concept board, which will be shared in the chat with you all. It is the KWL artifacts. And if anyone's not familiar with KWL, what that stands for is what you already know, what you want to learn, and what you have learned. So for this concept board, you can sign in as a guest, so you don't have to create an account. We're going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and do that. And we only want you guys to focus on the first 2 questions. And Mayfield will give you a little bit of a demonstration on how to use concept board if you're not familiar.
Yes, thank you. So, whoops, I actually didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to share my screen again in just a second. Let me get together. All right, so just a quick little tutorial on concept board. I do see plenty of you folks coming on in. And as Sam said, you'll only be focusing on the first 2 questions for now. And if you'd like to go ahead and place your 2 cents, at the very top, you can see the your dashboard might look a little different. You should have a sticky note that you can just click on, and you can just click right there. If you lose track of your sticky note, by the way, you can make sure you could just double click to get back in and be able to use text. So we'll give you a few minutes to be able to share your thoughts, and we'll just watch all these arrows scurrying until there.
So we'll give you guys about another couple minutes until about 3:15 to get your answers in for the first two. Don't worry about the third one. We'll work on that later together. So if you still haven't gotten your answer in, feel free to take your time, get it in there. That way we have something later on to reflect on. And from here, we're actually going to go into our lecture portion of the agenda today. So I will hand it off to Amit.
Yes, here we go.
So I'm going to talk about reflective artifacts. Reflective artifacts are when we create something for students that so they can evaluate and ponder something for themselves. It helps create growth mindset, and students can learn from their mistakes and not deviate from them. Reflective artifacts include activities similar to the one we're doing today, the KWL. It's a metacognitive activity where students are asked about their learning. This way, students are contributing to their self-awareness, monitoring their progress, and creating something that is documented. I often use 2 roses and a thorn and self-evaluation, so students leave with the main idea and big overall idea. They are left with the next step, reflecting on what concepts feel good and what they could practice more with. Additionally, the 2 roses and a thorn, it acts as a temperature check for me. So like I know what students need to look over next. The letters to yourself activities is when students are asked to study their why by having them write a letter to themselves and then coming back to it later and having the students reflect on the resilience they have built. They are receiving insight from themselves, which allows them to see their own growth. I will pass the mic to Sam, who will discuss something more physical and tangible.
Yes, so we actually, I got a question in the chat. 2 roses and a thorn is an activity that we usually use as a self-evaluation tool at the end of our session. So it's basically 2 things that the student liked about the session or enjoyed with your session, and then 1 thing that maybe they're still having troubles with or would like to improve upon. It's just something that kind of guides you into your next session with the students. It's a really good tool at the end of sessions, I think. Of course, you're welcome. Yes, and Lindsay answered it too. Thank you, Lindsay. All right, so what is an artifact? I saw a lot of responses to the first question in the concept board that we just did was something tangible, something comprehensive, something that you can take away with you at the end of your session. So we do have 2 different kinds now because of, the before times and the current times. So we do have physical and digital artifacts. So we're going to cover physical artifacts first, as you can always use a good physical artifact. So I put an example of one that I actually use. Yeah, the before times. So I put an example of an artifact that I use quite often in my class for social statistics. We have a formula sheet in our packet, and what I do with the students is we have it broken up by section. So every time there's a new section, we're learning a new formula. So it's broken up by the dash lines, and then as you can see, I have things labeled on there. And I have always in my session something for them to start off with, so that way they can kind of make sense of what we're putting everything together. So this is the formula sheet, and then in the next slide I have the symbols in their meaning sheet. So it's something tangible that they can take with them, that they can bring with them to their exams, since the professor allows them to use these in their exams. And that way they can kind of know what they're doing in their sessions. And when we're studying together, they know what to do next. So if you go to the next slide, Mayfield, thank you. So you'll see here symbols and meanings. And these are most of the symbols, if not all of the symbols that you saw in the previous one, so that the students know what to plug into their formulas. Obviously, everyone's subject will change and vary. This is just one of the most basic ones for social statistics that you absolutely need. You really do need this formula and symbols and meanings. And we often refer to these two sheets pretty much every single class, every single session. So it's definitely a tool that I have them bring and that I share online as well, so that I have had students who can't physically write themselves. So they've also asked me to have this online so that they can print it. And it's been a great resource in that way too. So you can make it digital. So digital artifacts, something like Concept Board, which is something that we all have been using. We used a little bit today. Google Doc, Google Slides, which we're currently also using, Jamboard, which is also something similar to Google Slides. It's a little bit fun. And then something like Jeopardy, which I actually did earlier this morning in my SI session. And this is actually the exam that I did, the exam 2 review. We did a Jeopardy game. It went really well, and it's usually a huge hit. And it's something tangible that they can take with them, because you can give them the link and they can study with it later on. And it's a great little thing. And then I like quizzes for the same reason. You get to make a game for them. You can make it fun, friendly competition. Kahoot, yeah, Kahoot is great. I know that's a big one too. And that's something that you can give them a link to and something that they can keep coming back to. So I think that having a digital artifact, especially nowadays, is so important for that reason. And I'm going to actually hand it off to Mayfield to go a little bit more over that.
Alrighty, so for me, I mean, an artifact is also something that students can make in session. So Sam kindly gave us so many of these wonderful like testing kind of exercises. Why would I make them when I could just have the students make them? Have them really engage with some of the material, like just a set amount of time in session, and have them create their own quiz or their own test questions or synthesis questions, depending on the subject, or an outline of a chapter or of their exam. Since lately I've been supporting classes, US history and philosophy, that will already have a study guide already available to students. So may as well have students actively work with those study guides within those sessions and have them jigsaw and tag team on different parts of that study guide so they can like kind of work together. But also, like, my personal favorite kind of artifact is a game, having students make games in sessions. So a couple of my favorites for both US historical figures or for philosophers, why not turn some of their concepts or stats into game stats for a Dungeons and Dragons character sheet? I mean,
Love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, my world famous D&D activity where we have students take various important facts and condense those facts into something much more accessible and something that they can look at as a visual aid. I also do have students do something like pitching a game, depending on whether it be like maybe a philosophical concept, although most often I usually do this when we learn about the New Deal and have them make a game out of New Deal policies in US history. And so students, don't underestimate students, folks. They will give you some bangers. Like I've had students pitch apps, I've had them pitch board games, video games, RPGs, the list is endless. And of course, I do actually have a relic from the before times, which you are actually seeing on screen here, but I do have them like in my hands. And unfortunately, you might not be able to see them all that great. But I had students once upon a time make Yu-Gi-Oh cards out of historical key terms. So the one that you're seeing on screen here is the Red Scare. And I believe it was a magic card that he made. So if you read it closely, it says imposes harsh penalties against those promoting revolution. And you know, I had quite a few fun ones too. Like we have League of Nations here, and it says organization to oversee world affairs and prevent war. And then I had and then as a model, I did also make one. I made Prohibition. It's a magic card also, and for as long as this card is face up, your monsters gain 100 attack points as you lose 150 life points. So yeah, just having fun with some of the activities that you have, and having students actively, you know, make it alongside with you. You know, it makes it a little bit more fun, and it also offers some more retainment and something for them to just kind of marvel at. I've kept these after 3 years, so who knows if students would be able to keep their own little artifacts that would help them along the road. But all this to beg the question about why is this so important, right? I mean, I think the key term here is clarity. Like it gives students something real to do. It gives them a clear objective. It also gives you a clear objective for what you want to, how you want to guide your students to getting a specific objective, across, right? So it makes for a clear outcome, and it makes a clear criteria in order to measure that performance. And I mean, we saw this, as I believe Sam had mentioned earlier, that we have like that fancy concept board that we can take a look at, right? In the before times, what we would used to do when it came to making like these big elaborate posters in our trainings, sometimes it would be like when we created like our houses and we would make posters, or it would be a norm setting activity where every group would write down on the board like what sort of norms we would expect in a learning environment. We would have a gallery walk at the end where we would walk around the room and just marvel at the creations that we all made. And so it's, I mean, now we have a digital version, which is concept board, but it's important because we can see the work that we do, and students are able to appreciate the work that they do and all of the hard work that was put into this creation.
So given the idea of an artifact as like a key takeaway, as Mayfield described, we want you to create your own learning strategies. Using the concept board that we were just on, there is a third sticky note that asks, what activity could you use that would prompt students to leave with your beneficial artifact? For about 5 to 10, I think we're good on time, 10. So for 10 minutes, we're gonna put you in trios and you guys are gonna answer that question. Does that sound good?
I think it sounds awesome. So Lindsay, you ready to put us in?
Yeah, breakout rooms are ready. Did everyone tell me whether they could or couldn't go in a breakout room? Hopefully.
Julie, no.
All right. Yes, Megan, I got you, no problem. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and send folks in.
All right, see you back in 10 minutes. All right, everybody's back. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back, everyone. All
Okay,
right, so
let
I'm
me
going to hand it over to Mayfield.
All righty. Sorry, I'm looking for my thing right now. Okay. All right. So definitely good conversations all around, I think. And it was definitely a pleasure looking at all of the sticky notes. But I mean, with all of that said, I mean, what is your artifact? We'll have quite a bit of time to talk about this too, since there's so much to share. Definitely feel free to share out loud, whether it be a takeaway that you got from the presentation, the activity you used, like absolutely let us know what you guys came up with. Even if you didn't come up with something very concrete, I definitely want to hear some of your pitches and of course any questions. So what do we got? Let me actually move over to the concept board again. Oh, look at me doing that. Oops. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of inspiration from like the Jamboard and Kahoot and stuff like that. Ooh. 20 maximum of 20 players, really? Oh, that's right.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that they had a paid plan like at all. Oh wait, no, that's a lie. I know that you have to pay for like certain features.
Yes.
And I know that Jeopardy Labs.
Yes, Jeopardy does the same thing, where if you want to add more columns or rows or, do different things with Jeopardy board, you get it's a $20 membership for the year, or actually I think for a lifetime, $20.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's $20 I don't have.
It's free. It's
Yeah,
free.
it's 5 by 5. All you have to do is remember one password.
Yes.
But I'm definitely seeing some fun stuff in here. Like, oh, wait, what's your paper timelines for history? Somebody tell me more.
So I went to, I don't remember what session it was, or what year it was, but I remember I went to a STEM breakout where they were talking about like making STEM more interactive. And I can't remember if it was like paleontology or like biology, but they had this giant piece of butcher paper on the ground. And then they had like laminated pieces of like, um, it was like a fact-based like timeline. Like you had to put things in time in terms of like when they evolved, I think. And so there was like little tape on the back. And so uh, the entire classroom had to look through like all of these different facts and like put together all their ideas and like lay out the timeline on the butcher paper according to like different sections of time. So it was really interesting, but I've never seen it happen again. So I feel like it's just like it's probably really hard to do. So I think that might be part of it. And I don't know who has access to that much butcher paper, but it could be cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's really cool. I'm also seeing, having students use their imaginations and creative thinking skills to make cards about politics. Now, I need to hear more about this one. Come on, fess up, who was it?
Oh, that was me. I wrote that one. Yeah, I like the idea of having students do card games of like little things, because there's a lot of things in political science where there's little events that happen throughout history that we talk about that could easily be put in a card, or like political ideologies that could be easily done in something like that. And I think that whole card game thing or D&D character sheet thing is a really great way for people to remember political figures and political events.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. It was definitely fun when I did that. I mean, just make sure you're clear about, that you keep it to the textbook. That is my only warning for that one. All righty. Creating an activity that is relevant towards the students. They can make direct connections. Ooh, what kind of direct connections? I mean, yeah, they would definitely have to be appealing to, as opposed to it being, boring. At least I hope it would. Would anyone want to elaborate on that? And you, of course, can elaborate in the chat.
I actually see an artifact in here that we also use in our sessions a lot, which is the spinning wheels that we usually use, the resource. Digital
Oh,
artifacts of spin the wheel for assessments.
ooh, who wrote that one? Would you like to elaborate on that one?
Yes.
I'm just kidding. Yes, Omar.
So we had a group of different disciplines in there, and we thought it'd be a good way to assess the students and where they are, depending on like the subject, if they're doing something review related, writing a paper, or just annotating their own work. Each wheel can be specific to like a checklist. So as they're working, they can revisit it, spin it, goes do, 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 do. Boom. Are you making sure that you're checking for your articles when you're writing? And then it removes it. And then you keep on working, spin it again, check the next thing. And they can keep on coming back as a little self-assessor for their work.
Yes, and by the way, for anyone interested in doing the little wheel thing, it's called Wheel Decide. I forget if it's wheeldecide.com or not. Okay, so I am, yeah. There we go.
Sorry about that, folks.
Oh, that's okay. An artifact for success, having confidence on what you're doing is right, and accept it when it's wrong. I don't know if I'm bleeding into question number 2, but does anyone want to kind of elaborate on that? Because we did actually have a conversation in the breakout that I was in. But if anyone wants to expand on that idea. Or if I've been reading too much and someone else wanted to share, that's perfectly fine. Yes, Crystal.
Well, I was in a breakout room, so I couldn't share this, but I did want to share an artifact that we used to make in the before times, which is totally a term I'm going to use from now on. We would play something like Uno, except with scenarios. So we would have the tutors create a series of scenarios, and then submit them. And we called them like nightmare scenarios, like things that might happen. And then, so we would put them in a card game and we'd make a card out of it. And then in there, we just like Uno, we would put like reverse and skip and these other sorts of things. And so we would get people sort of like into these small groups, and from the scenarios that they themselves created or the questions that they themselves created, they would play Uno and they would pick up a nightmare scenario, and then they would like talk about what they would do in that scenario or what that question would be. And then they would kind of put it at the bottom, and then they'd pick up another one. And that was kind of a fun way to both have an activity, but also have them create it themselves. We loved that artifact, and I miss my laminated Uno cards very much.
Yeah, that sounds way better than what I used to do. I used to do like a form of I called it anti-norm theater, but it was really theater of the oppressed, where people would come up with scenarios, like real scenarios that they actually like went through in an academic environment that made them feel uncomfortable, and then they would reenact it the way that it happened, and then act it again in a way that they wish that they had done. But I feel like the Uno card sounds,
It's amazing.
yeah, I feel like the Uno cards though sound much more it gives students a little bit more agency, I think.
love that. One of the online adaptations that we came up with was we had tutors write a scenario. We would get them into groups and we would have them write a scenario on a slide. We'd give them all a Google Slides and everybody gets a slide and then they would write their scenario. And then we would have them come back together and then go back into the groups and switch. So everybody had to discuss somebody else's scenario. That's as close as that we've come to it. I now I'm really curious, Mayfield, about how we can do a kind of theater of the oppressed, like to peer mentor or peer education style. Like that's an absolutely brilliant idea. Of just sort of like talking about what did happen and then stopping and then talking about like how that could have changed or how that could have gone. That is an absolutely brilliant idea. I think I'm going to incorporate that now. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you can have the artifact of having it recorded.
Totally. So it's like a theater of the nightmare scenarios. I don't know. We'll work on the title.
Is there anyone actually who struggled to come up with an artifact depending on their subject or their or I mean just the nature of the way that they tutor or SI? Because once upon a time someone told me that it would be difficult to make US history fun. STEM. How many people here are STEM people? Okay. Oops. Would either of you, well, any of you, Kayla, Jacqueline, or Joshua, would you like to share, like, if it was difficult for you to come up with an artifact? Or if you did come up with an artifact that you would use like in your practice?
I personally find that because I do computer science, so functioning example programs or program templates, examples of different logic and algorithms is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wait a minute. Who was that just now? Sorry.
That was me.
Right, Kayla, you're from San Bernardino Valley College, right? Right? Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
had no idea that there were SI for computer science. That is too cool. Oh my God, that must be so much fun. Jacqueline, did you want to share like either an artifact you came up with, or if you struggled to come up with one? I'd love to know specifically what discipline you're from.
Yeah, of course. So I'm in the mathematical sciences department at El Camino College, and I usually, we have like staff meetings where we can talk to other tutors in the same subject. So usually we come up with like trivia games, or we get them into groups and stuff. And even though math kind of seems scary, I think that it's hard to not make it, or like, I think the students just make it fun for themselves. So even if we're doing something like, for example, doing like problems on the board or making problems for each other, I think the students just kind of infuse the fun and they come up with activities as well. So it's really fun to see.
Right. No, that's really cool. I think for students to be able to make math problems like that in and of itself is an artifact, right? That's awesome in and of itself. Kayla's like, shout out to all the SI leaders of subjects without physical demonstration. That's too funny. Okay. Any last minute share outs before we? Yes, Crystal.
I just want to say that I really think that the Jeopardy idea has got a lot of legs, because I really do think that whether or not you have a theoretical or digital subject, or whether your subject has a physical demonstration, I love the idea of having a structured way for students to generate their own questions and answers and gamify that. That can be as abstract as math, computer science, or philosophy, or it could be, something as concrete as sort of like a physical art, or I just feel like that's a great way. And that's one of the things that I'm going to use moving forward, is just think about how we can get people to come up with questions and answers that challenge them, instead of us telling them what's challenging or us telling them what the answers are, to have them just sort of generate that for themselves. I think would be really sort of universally applicable. So thanks for that.
Of course, you're welcome. And also, to touch on what you just said, I think that it's awesome to have students create something like that, because it kind of forces them to learn the subject a little bit deeper. I've known since I started SIing, I definitely feel a lot more confident in that. And Megan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of go off of that idea of Crystal's, the idea of like creating having them create a Jeopardy game. I really like, especially with Jeopardy, because you get to assign the point value. So there's that like synthesizing and evaluating level of blooms, right? Where it's not just that they're creating questions, they have to figure out like, what are the harder questions to answer? What are the more important questions? What are the ones that we might struggle with? And so it's not just creating the questions, it's the fact that they have to kind of categorize it, that I think really like helps them think about the topic like in a different way. So I love that, Crystal. I'm stealing that too.
All right, fantastic. And if you guys didn't already notice, Crystal left a couple of links in the chat for you guys. So here's what's next. Again, if you have to go, definitely come back next Friday at 3 p.m. for metacognition and paired problem solving for peer educators. And if you want to do one of these presentations, you can click the link in the chat for proposals for fall 2022. But of course, definitely stay until 4:30. We'll discuss a little bit more and have a Q&A.